Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to my latest video. Today, I am actually going to be starting with my players to target late in your fantasy football draft series. I'm going to be starting with the quarterback position. I'm going to be speaking about 5 quarterbacks today. These 5 quarterbacks, based on Fantasy Pros' current ADP as of this recording, they are all outside the top 12 according to the ADP. So that would make these quarterbacks currently going as quarterback twos in most platforms. Basically, if you guys aren't aware of Fantasy Pros, they will take the collection of all the main platforms and have an average ADP, so you can get an idea where players are going. So yeah, basically these 5 quarterbacks, in my opinion, I think they could end up finishing anywhere between a top 5 quarterback by the end of the year to at least a top 10 quarterback and outperform where they're going in current drafts. The first quarterback I'm going to be speaking on is going to be Jordan Love for the Packers. One of the things I do every offseason, I usually do this in June on my X account, which you can follow me at Cody Talks NFL. I like to collect the stats and the regular season stats over the past 3 years and see where these quarterbacks might pop up as far as where they've been at with their production. Jordan Love popped up in 2 stats. He's actually tied for the 6th highest yards passed per attempt. He averages 7.6 yards per attempt since 2022. Now, that's out of quarterbacks with a minimum of 17 starts. And one thing I think, which you would hope would improve for Jordan Love this year, is his wide receivers catching the ball. He actually dealt with the 6th highest drop percentage over the last 3 seasons. His receivers were dropping 6.1% of his passes, and those, similar to the previous stat, that was out of quarterbacks with at least a minimum of 17 starts over the last 3 years. Now, basically, why I'm high on him is I'm looking for him to get back on track with his career. He dealt with multiple injuries last season. Of course, if you guys remember that Eagles game in Brazil that started the season, the way he suffered that injury, it looked like he was basically done for the year, but he ended up coming back. Then he ended up hurting something else, I remember, at some point last year. I forget exactly. Maybe it was his hand. I can't remember exactly. But basically, he dealt with injuries throughout the year. So I'm looking for him to have a healthy offseason, go into this season and stay healthy. One of the reasons why I also like him is he has so many people that he can spread the ball around to. They drafted Matthew Golden, who I'm very high on, out of Texas with their first-round pick. They got Jaden Reed, who showed some promise in his first 2 years, who's entering year 3. They got Romeo Doubs. They got Christian Watson, who will see it if and when he'll be back on the field after he tore his ACL last year. They got Dontavian Wicks, who's also entering a year 3. They got the 2 tight ends and Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave. Plus, they even got Josh Jacobs, who's effective as a pass catcher, as a running back. And in my opinion, as long as he stays healthy, I think he has a ceiling to finish as a top 5 fantasy quarterback this season, which is why I would be looking to target him late in my drafts. Moving on to my second quarterback I'm looking at drafting late, it's going to be the young quarterback out there in New England, Drake May. There's a kid I really liked when he was entering the draft class last year, and I thought last year as a rookie he really flashed some good things not only as a thrower, he can really run the ball. He'll take off and get some chunk gains, which you do like as a fantasy quarterback, because anytime you can get a mobile quarterback, that's going to offer you a higher floor as far as fantasy production. So I think he has the opportunity to take a major leap in his sophomore season. And he also has plenty of pass catchers he can spread the ball to. They signed Stephon Diggs, so that's going to give him the veteran presence. They got Pop Douglas, Demario Douglas, wherever you want to call him. He's entering year 3. And then they got Kendrick Bourne. They signed Mac Hollins from the Bills. They got Kyle Williams, the rookie wide receiver out of Washington. Kayshon Boutte, who's entering his year 3. And then they got their, I think they're both second-round picks. Maybe one of them was third-round picks from last year. Javon Baker and Jalen Polk. Now, some of those guys might end up being cut or traded, but that does mean he still has a good set of wide receivers. They still has Hunter Henry as a viable option at the tight end spot, a dependable option who can catch him touchdowns, especially when they get into the red zone. And what I also like about guys that can help him get little points throughout games is going to be his running backs, Ramondre Steven and TreVeyon Henderson. Henderson out of Ohio State, dude, he can catch a dump off and take it to the house for like a 70-yard touchdown. So those are my reasons why I'm high on Drake May as a late round quarterback option. My third quarterback, this is a quarterback that it was cool. When he's healthy, he's always been like a top 10, top 12 fantasy quarterback every single season. And as long as he can get back and stay healthy for all 17 games, I think Dak Prescott can be a very high floor option for fantasy managers this season. Now, I mentioned with Jordan Love, like I mentioned, I like to collect the stats on my X account over the past 3 regular seasons. Now, obviously, Dak was hurt for a majority last year. I think he had one of the other 2 seasons he had to miss games because of injury, so he's not in a lot of stats. But these are the stats that Dak Prescott was mentioned in that I collected over this last month. First of all, he had the oh, that was a total butcher of the word six. He had the sixth best completion percentage, minimum of 17 starts among the quarterbacks. He had a 67.4% completion percentage over the last 3 regular seasons. He had the seventh best on target pass percentage, 78.1%. That's also a minimum of 17 starts. Next stat is also a minimum of 17 starts among the quarterbacks over the last 3 regular seasons. He had the seventh best passing success rate, even though he missed majority of the time last season. And like I said, I think he missed some other games in the 2 previous seasons. He still had the ninth most passing touchdowns over the last 3 years. And then he also had the ninth most RPO passing yards with 1,159 yards. As far as the touchdowns, he had 70 passing touchdowns over the last 3 regular seasons. And what do you like about Dak too is he can run the ball as well and get you those chunk gains. And then what I like about him is I think he has the potential to really go off as a passer this year. He's got CeeDee Lamb, who's graded in his own. Then you got George Pickens, who they traded for, who's entering a contract here, who will be looking for a big contract extension or a contract from another team next offseason. So that can help Dak go off. They still got Jalen Tolbert he can throw the ball to, Kevontae Turpin as well. They got the solid tight end and Jake Ferguson. And then they got a trio of guys that can help out as pass catchers in the backfield between Miles Sanders, Javonte Williams, and I'm really high on Jaden Blue out of Texas as a pass catcher. So that's why I think Dak, he might not be like a high ceiling type of fantasy quarterback you can draft late, but I think he's a high floor where if he does stay healthy, I can see him finishing at least as a top 10 fantasy quarterback again this year. My other quarterback, it's a guy that had that sophomore slump last year. I'm looking for him to get back on track to how he played as a rookie. It's going to be C.J. Stroud down in Texas. He only popped up in one stat, which he's actually tied with the Jordan Love stat I mentioned earlier. He is tied for the 6th highest pass yards per attempt since 2022 with the 7.6 yards per attempt. Again, that's a minimum of 17 starts among quarterbacks in the last 3 regular seasons. So yeah, as I mentioned, I'm looking for him to play like he did as a rookie, where he was I think at least a top 10 quarterback. I don't think he finished in the top 5 during his rookie season. And then as far as his pass catchers, obviously they got Nico Collins coming back. They signed Christian Kirk from the Jaguars, so that should help him out. They drafted those 2 rookie wide receivers out of Iowa State in Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. They still got John Mechie. And then they got the tight ends, Dalton Schultz, who's been a very solid tight end. I still like Brevin Jordan, their backup tight end as well. And then Joe Mixon is quietly a sneaky guy he can dump off in the screen game. So yeah, I think with CJ, I think he's got a high floor, but also has a high ceiling. I would be looking at him finishing as a top 8 quarterback as long as he can get some protection from his new offensive line, and those rookie wide receivers combined with Nico and Christian Kirk can help deliver him into a good season. And then my last quarterback I'm going to be speaking about today is a guy that's probably entering the most pressure of a season in his career out of all the quarterbacks in the NFL this year. It's going to be Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville. Couple of reasons. First of all, I'll start with the stats like I've been doing with anybody that was in my stats from the last 3 regular seasons. Trevor Lawrence, he's got the 8th most RPO passing yards over the last 3 years. He's got the 8th most play action passing yards over the last 3 years. The 10th most completed air yards over the last 3 years. And one thing that quietly Trevor does good is he's really good with his feet. He's a mobile quarterback. He can get you those. He gives you a higher floor as a fantasy quarterback because of his rushing ability. One stat that's very interesting over the last 3 regular seasons, Trevor Lawrence is tied for the 4th most rushing touchdowns since 2022. You want to know who the guy that he's actually tied with the most rushing touchdowns over the last 3 years? It's Lamar Jackson. Kind of a mind-blowing stat when you think about it with how much Lamar runs the ball. Lamar runs the ball, but he doesn't really get a lot of rushing touchdowns. And then also with Trevor Lawrence's rushing ability, he has the ninth most RPO rushing yards since 2022. He's got the ninth most rushing first downs since 2022. And then last start, this is a minimum of 17 starts among all quarterbacks over the last 3 years. He's got the 10th best rushing success rate with a 53.8% rushing success rate. So the way I view him is I think he's a stash option, right? I think he's a guy where maybe if you don't get one of the elite quarterbacks and you take like a high floor quarterback in the mid rounds, but you don't really trust that high floor quarterback in the mid round, you kind of want to have a backup option with a ceiling. I think that's where you do with Trevor. You can stash him on your bench. As I mentioned, he's entering a pressure season. So if you select him, you're betting on Trevor Lawrence is going to be putting together his best season in his NFL career. And if he is able to do that, he's going to finish at least as a top 8 fantasy quarterback. And then as far as his pass catchers, he's got Brian Thomas Jr., who really impressed during his rookie season last year. Obviously, they have Travis Hunter coming in. We'll have to see how often Travis Hunter is on the field every single game. But they did sign Dyami Brown out from the Commanders, who I think is a very solid wide receiver. We'll have to see what Parker Washington can do for them this year, but he's a guy to keep an eye on. And then they got the tight end Brenton Strange, who kind of flashed as a tight end for the Jaguars in the back half of the schedule last year. And then as a common theme for all these quarterbacks, anytime I do like a late round quarterback, I do want to make sure they at least have a pass catcher out of the backfield. And Travis Etienne Jr. is a very solid option as a pass catcher for Trevor out of the backfield that can help you get those little chunk, easy dump off gains. So yeah, those are my top 5 late round quarterbacks. Again, all those quarterbacks are outside the current top 12 ADP according to Fantasy Pros. So these guys are going as backup options who I think could eventually finish at least as a top 10 fantasy quarterback this year. So as always, guys, if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, make sure you do follow me on all my platforms. The next video I'll do 5 running backs to draft later in your drafts. I'm gonna be shooting to get that out as soon as possible. I'm gonna try to get this series wrapped up in these next week or within the next week. I will be unavailable next weekend to do videos. I am going out of town. I have to attend a funeral, so I won't have time to do that. So I'm gonna try to get these next 3 videos out to you as soon as possible. But make sure you subscribe so you guys know when those do hit my channel. I'll talk to you soon. Enjoy your weekend if you're watching it, day, night. Talk to you guys later. Peace out.